Pokémon Mystery Dungeon was a very special game for me growing up. I was a massive fan of the TV series, had all of the games up until this point, and randomly one day I saw a TV advert. It was a very random TV advert because it showcased a Pokemon who had been turned into a Pokemon from a human. It was called a Mystery Dungeon game, which I had never heard of before, and as an 8-year-old kid, seeing a human being turn into a Pokemon absolutely blew my mind. I was like, holy sh*, I want to play this game. I want to be a Pokemon. That was like a big selling point for me, was becoming a Pokemon and living inside their world. The Mystery Dungeon games pretty much involves the characters. They go through these areas called dungeons. They collect these items that can heal you, that can revive you as well, and the main point is to explore the dungeons, navigate through them to find these staircases to take you to the next level. And Mystery Dungeon combined the worlds of Mystery Dungeon, which was exploring, fighting, finding items, and combining it with Pokemon. Combining those two worlds, no one thought it was going to work. There was a company called Chunsoft who had made some Mystery Dungeon games before, and they did work on some very popular Dragon Quest games as well. So they did have that background for them to combine the worlds of Mystery Dungeon with Pokemon. Then they created the games Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue. Red was originally made for the Game Boy, while Blue was made at the same time. It was made for the DS, so you did have those two different options. But a big thing about the Mystery Dungeon games is the story. As for me personally, that was always the best part about the Mystery Dungeon games. The game has a very unique start versus the other games in Mystery Dungeons and Pokemon. You're first introduced to the game with a personality quiz. It's a great way of allowing you to choose your character, but the answers are based upon you yourself, so it's kind of like a way of attaching you to your character, since technically this Pokemon has been chosen from your answers. In the first games, you do have to do the quiz one by one. You'd have to either restart the Game Boy or the DS to restart the quiz and retry another Pokemon with. Personally, I found it really fun to just choose a Pokemon based on your answers. Sometimes I would give my real answer just to see which kind of Pokemon I was, but sometimes I would just put fake or random answers. You could even Google it on the Wikipedia page and it gives you certain nature types based on your answers. You could always cheat on that if you want a certain Pokemon. Then once the quiz is over, you're given the Pokemon that you have chosen based on your answers. Then after that, you're given the option to choose your partner Pokemon. The game does revolve around you and a partner Pokemon, which is very centered to the story. You can choose any partner you wanted depending on the type you chose. So if you chose a fire starter, you aren't able to choose a fire partner. So you could be like a water or grass type. You can choose whichever one you wanted from the list there. So once you've chosen your team, of course you can nickname either of them to give them more personality touch, or just give them a stupid name as Pokemon fashion as always. You're awoken in the Pokemon world. For some reason, your partner is just conveniently there who wakes you up into this world and introduces you. While you're both speaking, all of a sudden there's a Butterfree who gives you your very first job to rescue her son, Caterpie. This is a really good way of introducing you to the game. It's not so much shoving you into a tutorial that lasts hours and hours into a certain school looking at you, Super Mystery Dungeon. You are chucked into your very first dungeon. Whenever you move or go onto certain items, the game does introduce you to them and gives you a basic explanation. There is also a menu option which you can open up. It does have some hints and tips, which is really useful as a first time player. The game does also teach you about staircases, which is how you do get through the dungeon itself. Each dungeon does have a specific amount of levels in. You have to go through staircase to staircase to get to the very next level. Each one does have a specific amount of levels in. Then when you get to the very bottom of the very first one, you then find Caterpie. So a very successful first mission. Congratulations. You're then thanked by Butterfree. Thank you so much for finding her son. Caterpie even becomes a big fanboy of yours, which is quite creepy. Congratulations, you've done your very first rescue job. Your partner then takes you back to their base, does technically become yours. I always kind of felt bad. She's like, you kind of take their home. Where do they stay? They do stay in their own friend area. Each Pokemon in this game, they do have their own friend area, which they can just chill at, relax, and just wait for you to join them on missions, I guess. What's cool about your base is it does personalize after a specific type. So if you're a fire Pokemon, for example, it'll then personalize the base to look fire themed, which I always found quite nice. The game does implement very slowly the talks about natural disasters, which does play an important role in this game. Conveniently, it does link in with the human and the natural disasters at the same time, which is a very important part about the game. The very next day, you're given some jobs by Magnemites to find their friend Magnemite. This dungeon you do go into is a little bit more difficult. This game does a great job of upping the difficulty very slowly for you. So with each new dungeon, it just gets that a little bit more difficult. So once you do finally find Magnemite, he does want to join your team. Unfortunately, you haven't unlocked the option to unlock friend areas at the moment. That does come back at a later time. Friend areas is how other Pokemon do join your team. So for a Pokemon to join, you do need that specific friend area unlocked previously. Otherwise, they just will not give you the option to join. Your character then goes into a deep sleep, then they see these weird sensations in their dream. We do later find out what these dreams do mean, but at the moment it's just hinting at the future and the role our Pokemon does play here. We then awoke into Dugtrio, which I always found this scene a little bit funny since it just appears out of nowhere, but for some reason it's like, let me just talk to these people under the ground. How do they talk to us under there? Like, how can we hear that? But he does give us the job to rescue his son. Once we navigate through this new dungeon we just unlocked, we're introduced to our very first boss Pokemon. Boss Pokemon in this game, of course, are just much more difficult Pokemon than the average one. They have more health, they can do more damage, and normally they are legendary Pokemon. I beat this one with Blasty just for, you know, like a true coward, he does then run away. Well, he flies away. And also Magnemite's just there just to help us to get Diglett out as well. Great. Teamwork. We then do get introduced to Wigglytuff, who's in charge of the friend areas which we can purchase from. Magnemite just comes out of nowhere, peer pressures Wigglytuff and gets a free friend area. That's the type of person I like on my team. But now we have the option to unlock these friend areas, which is how we get other Pokemon recruited onto our team. I always found the hub area kind of like a homey feeling because this is where everything is. You can buy your items, you can buy moves, which are quite rare. You can bank items to store, to take out. You can store your money, so if you die, you don't lose your items or money. You can remember your moves. There's this thing in this game called linking moves as well, which will combine two moves. Whenever you use it once, it'll use the two moves at the same time. I always found that a little bit overpowered, so I've never actually really used it before, but it does sound really good if you wanted to try it. You do also have other areas in this game. You can go into the fighting dojo to challenge yourself, and throughout later in the game, it is a great way to level up and grind. There is an extensive post game which does require you to grind a lot. So this is where this really comes into. It's after the main story. There's another area which I always found very relaxing to just chill at. I mean, just look at it. I could just fall asleep here. And of course, you do have Pelipper's office. This is where the bulletin board is to find all of the jobs. This is how you take on jobs, which is very important for a rescue team. You take jobs to rescue Pokemon, find certain items for them, and this is how you rank up as well, by taking on jobs. Each job will have a specific amount of points to give you, depending on the difficulty. You can go inside Pelipper's office, which is how the internet communication was used. It wasn't so much used as popular back then because you had the annoying link cable on the Game Boy, but it was more popular on the DS just because you had Wi-Fi back then, so it wasn't too bad. There's a little bit of a commotion going on in the central hub. We introduced some more characters. We got Shiftry, who's a team leader of his team, called Team Shiftry. Then you have Jumpluff, who's asking for help to rescue their friend, and the only person that can really help them is Shiftry because they need a gust to win, and conveniently Shiftry's there and the right person for the job. Shiftry does deny the request at first, but then we're introduced then to a famous team in the area called Team Alakazam, Team Act, whichever one you want to call them. Shiftry, of course, in their presence completely shits his pants. He accepts the jobs and he's on his way. We're then introduced to Team Meanies, which, you know, they live up to their name. Team Meanies, their leader's Gengar, so of course, you know, look at him. Generically, of course, Gengar has to be evil in every single game that he's on. They go through your mailbox, they steal all your jobs. We then see our number one fan, Caterpie, who's asking us for our help to rescue their friend Metapod, who's been stuck in these woods, and even trying to steal the job from Caterpie that he's trying to give to you. Making our way through there, we beat up Team Meanies as we do in style, of course, and rescue Metapod. Fantastic. So it's been some time now since Shiftry originally took the job. Conveniently, he has come back from the job, and now it's up to the main character and the partner to take on the job and see what's happened. What this game does so well is just humanizing all of these Pokemon. We're just so used to these Pokemon just saying their names, and that's really about it. That's all we've really seen about the Pokemon in the previous generations, and we've never really seen them talk or really do much else. Shiftry does then get captured by this Pokemon we've just seen, but then basically tells us, you know, if you want him, come get him, type thing, which spurs up the characters. We're ready to go, ready to fight Zapdos. For all we know, this Pokemon is hundreds of years old, maybe even older than that, but these two children come in, they beat him up. They're like, here you go, take Shiftry, please leave me alone. Zapdos does then say that they basically will hold him back and we'll fight them at a later time, which does hint of some form of rematch, which does get covered in the post game, which is cool. For some reason, the partner unveils that the main character is a human, which always never really made sense to me. Like, something as huge as that, surely, you know, you'd want to keep that as a secret, right? But of course, Alakazam's massive brain with his 5000 IQ tells you to find a specific Pokemon called Xatu. Alakazam believes that Xatu may know the reason why a character turns into a human, so that is our very next mission. So once you meet Xatu, he's basically ignoring you. He won't talk to you whatsoever because he's so focused on staring his eyeballs out into the sun. You're then given two options to either tickle him or to fight him, which, you know, is two random options, but I went with the tickle option. He does eventually break, and he then does tell you that the main character turned into a human is linked to the disasters that's going on at the moment. But conveniently, Gengar, the little is there at the same time, and he seems to have some form of evil plan there, as usual, as Gengars do, right? So we're now told the Legend of Ninetales, which talks about a certain Pokemon had been cursed by Ninetales. A certain human had angered Ninetales, which the legend doesn't really entail what they did. Did they say something stupid? Is Ninetales just very sensitive? But once Ninetales does try to curse a human, but the human's partner Gardavia is there at the same time, who then shields the human and takes on the curse for herself. Ninetales does say to the human, I can take away the curse for you, but the human does run away. But conveniently, Ninetales has prophesied that human will someday be reborn as a Pokemon, and when that happens, the balance of nature in our world will collapse, which conveniently does tie in with the dreams we have been seeing as the character, because slowly and surely the silhouette of this Pokemon we see in our dreams tells us what's happening. We slowly start talking to them, and they do look to be a Gardavia, so it does tie those things in at this point of the story very well. We're alerted by a partner that there's some commotion going on in the center, and let's just see what's happening. Well, of course, Gengar is in the middle there talking absolute about us. This does actually cause some doubt in the main character, which is, once again, we're seeing just more human side of our characters here. Normally the main character is this perfect being who can do anything, anywhere. Gengar then does reveal that your character is the person who is linked in this story, and from the legends of the tales and the dreams we've been having where Gardavia is even linked in there, everything was just adding up for the main character to be some form of evil person who left this Pokemon behind, but not even given an option to defend ourselves. She's just ... for both of the replies, which makes even the person playing the game doubt the character. But the fact that all the Pokemon in this area attack the Pokemon without even hesitation is insane. Why would you believe Gengar, of all people? All these Pokemon in this area have seen what we've done. We've rescued other Pokemon. We've been good Pokemon, I guess you could say. But Gengar does pit everyone against us and tells them to attack us and get rid of us, which everyone does. Alakazam's team then do confront us, but of course the big brain's coming back into play, and he tells us to run far away and find the truth. This is a very important part of the story, because the two main characters do go through this tragic story of being chased and hunted down by all the other Pokemon they thought were on their side. We go through all these trials and tribulations of going through multiple dungeons, fighting the other boss Pokemon. There's two other legendaries. You got Articuno and you got Moltres. Two of these legendaries you have to fight. You have no chance for rest. It's just action and go and go and go. The very first time you do experience this, you aren't really too prepared for the long journey. As a more experienced player, you can prepare by getting loads of reviver seeds and healing items where this isn't too difficult, but for the very first time, and especially as a kid as well, you're just chucked into these difficult dungeons, fighting all these difficult bosses, and you just really feel the difficulty of retrying and failing and just not giving up. Your partner's even there constantly just reassuring you that they believe in you and they're on your side, but it's a great way of reinforcing their friendship and just showing you what your partner means to you. Look at the cute sprites and their faces, just so much emotion there for some pixels on the screen. What makes these fights also more difficult, because depending on your types as Pokemon, as a starter or the partner, each fight could be more difficult. So if you have a fire and a grass type, Moltres would be really difficult, but if you have a grass and a water type, Articuno would be very difficult, but you die and you die and you die. I was prepared with a lot of reviver seeds, so that was absolutely fine. They did hint at this earlier, but we do see this Pokemon called Absol who does defend us from Articuno and even wants to join our team because, I quote, because they want to fight natural disasters. That's it. That's all we need. I mean, Absol looks cool, so I can't complain too much. Now we have three amigos finding out the truth. There are a lot of beautiful moments in this story, even though it does become a lot more difficult. It's just a lot of scenery. It's very pretty. There's a lot of sweet moments between the two characters and a lot of great soundtracks as well. For me, whenever I think back about this game and nostalgia, this is always the number one part I always think of. Obviously, the ending does get a bit more sad, which we'll later cover. But for me, this is one of the main things that makes that ending so sad, because of the difficulties that we went through together. It's kind of like in real life, if you go through something difficult, there's a friend or family member who hopefully is always there for you and believes in you and knows that you're a good person. So once we get to the area where Ninetales should be, conveniently Alakazam's team, they do turn up and the battle commences. I always kind of wished we had an actual battle to fight these three Pokemon instead of a cutscene. I feel like it would have been more impactful and to see the growth of our characters to actually fight and beat the strongest Pokemon in that area. Then Ninetales jumps down like a beast. Ninetales then reveals that we're their awaiting guests, and of course they reveal the truth that our character is innocent. Fantastic. The part of them breaks down that the journey's finally over and they can go back to living life as normal. But all of a sudden there's an earthquake, and we're later revealed that Groudon has just woken up, and Alakazam's like, hey, we'll sort this, right? 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 Now the journey's finally over, the team head back home. The team finally head back home and reveal the truth to everyone. But Gengar's just here they're like, hey, where's the proof? Which, you know, is what we could have said to them in the first place. But the postman Pelipper is there to reveal the truth to everyone. I was just thinking, has Pelipper been following us this entire time? Has Pelipper just been there in the background constantly just watching us? Everyone else does now turn on Gengar. They're then kicked out, everyone goes after them instead. Great happy ending. Life just goes back as normal for a little bit. The game's being nice to you and just wants you to relax, just go about your days as normal. You can grind, you can do whatever you want. Then we give him the job to fight the bad Mankey gang. They've been very bad boys and we have to, I don't want to say kill. So we go out of our way to defeat the Mankey gang, but they're very short tempers. They do follow us back to our base to try and fight us again. For doing the job, we're given an item called a peeled chestnut, which is absolutely useless in the game. It can't be sold, it can't be used for anything, but for the chestnut does come in handy since we can peel it for the Mankey gang. It's like crack cocaine for the Mankey gang, so they go absolutely crazy for it and even willing to do slave labor for us as well, so fantastic. So we take advantage of that here and we put them to work. The team do offer to renovate our base and some of the Pokemon we helped in the past even offered to help us out as well. So after a few more crack hits later, the base is completely finished, and what's quite nice about this part is it is a little bit grindy and annoying, but you've kind of worked a little bit hard to upgrade and renovate the base. So then once it's over, it feels very satisfying that you've accomplished something. And of course the base does actually look like your Pokemon that you've chosen, and what's cool is there's designs for every single other Pokemon you could choose here. Wow, I did this. Quite a few days later, there's still the earthquakes that's going on that's connected with Groudon. Everyone seems to be quite worried as Alakazam's team still haven't recovered. Since they're considered the strongest team in the area, you'd expect them to defeat this legendary Pokemon with no issues. But everyone comes together to pit their strongest Pokemon to form a form of rescue team, see what's happened and hopefully get to the bottom where Alakazam's team is. But we're not chosen for whatever reason, even though, you know, we've been legendary Pokemon, we're not chosen. But of course, a few days later, we later find out this team couldn't even reach Groudon. They couldn't even get to the bottom, but of course we step up. We're like, we can do this. We've beaten legendary Pokemon. This will be easy. Conveniently, it's not easy. I think Chunsoft finally remembered that this is a mystery dungeon game and has to be a bit difficult, and they ranked up the difficulty quite a lot. There's a lot more levels in this dungeon, and the Pokemon here are a lot stronger. We defeat Groudon like it's nothing and rescue Alakazam. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. After defeating Groudon, we're later informed by Xatu the actual cause of these disasters, that there's a big meteor coming to destroy the world of Pokemon. This is also confirmed in our dreams by Gardavia that this is the actual reason why we became a Pokemon in the first place. We willingly decided that we wanted to become a Pokemon to save them, but once we actually fix the issue, we'll no longer be a Pokemon. Return back to be a human. But to destroy this meteor, we do need the help of Rayquaza, who is up high in the Sky Tower, which conveniently we need a certain item to get into there, which is made by Alakazam, Xatu, and Gengar himself, who for some reason wants to help us now. I guess he feels a little bit bad after, you know, trying to get everyone to kill us. This is where the game gets very, very hard. As a kid, I just remember dying and dying and dying and dying again. I should probably mention about these monster houses. It gets very common in the Sky Tower for whatever reason. In monster houses, when you go to a certain level in the dungeon, but all of a sudden a lot of Pokemon fall down from the ceiling and now you have to fight a bunch of different Pokemon, which is a massive challenge of course. Unless you're prepared, the likeliness of you dying is very high. Thankfully we were prepared for this when we got our way to the very top where Rayquaza is. We then beat the final boss and tell Rayquaza to look up, but you know, shouldn't he technically feel the meteorite falling since they're technically right by it?
Perhaps.
So Rayquaza finally wants to help, so he just shoots out the massive hyper beam out of nowhere. It looks absolutely epic for this little cutscene. After the huge massive explosion, the character actually dies and goes into some form of netherworld. We're actually dragged back by Gengar, who wants to help us once again. I guess he's not so bad after all. Now once the main character and the partner make their way back to where every Pokemon is, everyone celebrates, it's great news, the world is safe. But of course, the partner doesn't actually know that once this is over, the main character has to go back to being a human. Then there's a massive emotional scene where everyone's there just tearing up that the main character has to leave now in absolute tears, and let's not forget the tears from ourselves dripping down onto the screen. The credits roll. We're pretty much led to believe that our characters become a human again. They'll never see the partner again. But as the credits are rolling, our character decides that they want to stay as a Pokemon. How could they make this decision without having their past memories? What about their family? We don't even know how old our character was. They're probably a kid, but what about their family? What about their parents? Did they just not care? Our character and the partner finally reunited. Then the credits truly do roll once again. Then the emotional reuniting of our character and our partner comes to an end of our story here. Once you're beating the game, you're introduced to the extensive and absolutely huge post-game of Pokémon Mystery Dungeon, which is probably one of the biggest we've seen so far in the series. You have the option to evolve, there's tons of different challenge dungeons. There is a little bit of a story left over in the game which involves around Gengar. One day Gengar comes up to you and asks for you to take him to Ninetales. Once we do finally get to Ninetales, it is later actually revealed that selfish human that was in the main story was actually Gengar themselves, who was a human turned into a Pokemon. It makes a lot of sense. But Gengar seems to be a little bit nicer here and actually wants to help Gardavia out. We then go on another mission to actually rescue and help Gardavia. Gengar was willing to sacrifice themselves to save Gardavia, which was a massive turn for them as a character, and it was a great way of developing a character we perceived as being an evil person. Once we did finally rescue Gardavia with the help of Gengar, Gardavia completely forgot all of her memories from the past. Gardavia even then wants to join your rescue team, which then brings it to an end of the entirety of the story for the full game. There is of course a lot more dungeons for you to do. You could completely rank up your rescue team, you could do more challenging dungeons, you can recruit every single Pokemon, including all of the legendary Pokemon. There's just so much to do, so many hours to spend. There's just so many good things I could say about this game. But for me, always, of course, it's going to be the story. There's just so much that happens, so many emotions, from the great music, everything just fits in so well. Every single dungeon has its own unique music or theme song. You know it's about to get intense with that certain song does play, and the music just complements the scenes and the story so well. Personally, for me, Pokémon Mystery Dungeon is just always going to be one of my favorite games. I wanted to make this video just because I was replaying the game since they released it on the Nintendo Switch Online, and I thought I wanted to replay it to relive the memories, and the game just still really held up there. There is of course the remastered version. If you've never played the series, I would probably recommend that one. There's a ton of gameplay changes that have improved the game. It does make it a lot easier, to be honest with you, but as a introductory game to the series, it's just a lot more beginner friendly, which is nice, and there's much more updated 3D models. The music is a lot similar to the original as well, but overall this game's always going to be one of my favorites. It's always a cozy game I can go back to. I never would have expected the journey I went through playing this game when I originally saw the TV advert on the screen. The TV advert looking back just seemed so silly, but I wasn't expecting to go on such an emotional journey and get attached to these characters, the world, and the music. There's just everything about this game to me personally is just a masterpiece, and I completely love this game. I'll just never forget about it. But I just wanted to share my experience with the game. This definitely isn't a review. If it was, it'd be absolutely terrible. I would love to hear about your experience with the game. Of course, it does help the algorithm as well, so there's that. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, but I hope it was okay to watch. I would of course love to hear about your experience with the game. What does it mean to you? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.